Hi, this is Kevin Thomas, and welcome to the At Home Film Festival. This week we are going to take a look at lackluster blockbusters, not giant hits like we see here, but movies that didn't make the money that the studio had hoped for. And sometimes the studio's expectations are way too big. A blockbuster is usually a movie the studio completely supports, spent a lot of money on, and releases it usually during a 3-day weekend or at Christmas time or sometime where there's more people going to the movies, because the ultimate goal is to recap their money and, of course, to make a big profit. But I will tell you in this week's video where I showcase good movies that disappointed the studios or were just disappointments at the box office, and yet sometimes the studio's bar was way too high for them to ever achieve that goal. So let's see what I'm talking about now. Our first movie on my list is Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves, which came out this year. You can find on Paramount Plus. It made over $200 million worldwide. So you and I would think, wow, that's super successful. But it cost $150 million. How on earth are they going to recoup these monies? I don't know. I mean, that $200 million is internationally. So in the US, it made like $93 million, which would not have made this successful. The movie even leaves it open for a sequel, but I don't think that's going to happen. This movie was funny, entertaining, great action, great stars. It's wonderful. You must watch it. But I think it really had a long road ahead of it because the studio put so much money in it that it would take almost a miracle to recoup that. A lot of times movies nowadays go to streaming channels where they cost like $24 to rent. That could help recoup the monies. But this went right to Paramount Plus. So I don't know, since it's from Paramount Studios, it's Paramount Plus, I don't know how much money was exchanged in that transaction. But that $150 million it cost to make did not include advertising. And you know movies need advertising. I mean, this is one of those movies where you went to the theater and there was giant posters that you could post with pictures in because you wanted to be part of the movie. It did well, but really, how easy is it to recoup $150 million? I ask you. One of the biggest blockbusters that sort of seemed disappointing only to the studio was Cleopatra from 1963. This movie cost $44 million in 1963. That's $400 million nowadays. While this movie won 4 Oscars and was successful at the box office and was even nominated for Best Picture and Rex Harrison for Best Actor, it really took forever to get its money back because it cost so much. And it was plagued with problems. First, they started filming in London, but it was super cold. Elizabeth Taylor got pneumonia and she had to go on a tracheotomy, and she still had that scar for the rest of her life. Then they moved it to Italy, where then it was too hot. So they had to rebuild all the sets and they had to hire a bunch of new actors. Some actors had to bow out because they had other commitments. They did not know this movie would take forever to make. It is really good, but recouping $44 million in 1963 is not easy. The great director Joseph L. Mankiewicz, who won Oscars for All About Eve and A Letter to Three Wives, actually, when he was filming this, he wanted to make it into 2 movies. One of them was about Cleopatra and Caesar. The other one was about Cleopatra and Mark Antony. But the studio said, let's just make it in one because everybody would rather see Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton rather than just Elizabeth Taylor and Rex Harrison. Oddly, of the 3, Rex Harrison is the one who got Oscar nominated. But if it wasn't for TV, this movie would have not ever have made a profit, because when they sold it to television, they sold it for $5 million, and that was enough to put it over the edge to make it profitable. So yes, it was one of the biggest hits of 1963, but once again, it takes a lot to recoup $44 million. And I don't know what the studio was expecting to make that happen. But anyway, it's a good movie. You can find it on Max quite a bit, and it's sometimes on TCM. Check it out. In preparing for this show, I realized that 20th Century Fox was really the movie risk takers, because they're the ones that did Cleopatra, but they also did Hello, Dolly, which you could find on Disney+. Now, Hello, Dolly ended up being one of the top 5 grossing films of 1969, and it won 3 Oscars, more than any other Barbra Streisand movie. It was up for Best Picture, and although she was great and I love her, but many people thought she was miscast because she was so young. Yet the Golden Globes and the British Academy didn't think she was that young because they both nominated her for Best Actress. But aside from all of that, this is a very old-fashioned musical, but in 1969, we were getting movies like Easy Rider and being more cool and hip and hippie. So maybe that stopped Hello Dolly from being the giant hit that it could be. Over the years, of course, it did develop a cult following. It's very popular with gay filmgoers. And once again, it was saved by technology because Hello Dolly is one of the very first movies ever to be on VHS and Betamax. Younger people look that up. So being able to buy this movie on Betamax and VHS for $69.95, oh my God, yes, saved this movie from being a financial loser, and it made a profit. And of course, it plays at retrospectives over the years all the time, and people have gone to embrace it, but still, for the amount of money it cost in 1969, $25 million, that was a lot of money to invest in a movie with a star, Barbra Streisand, who at the time had no movies released in theaters yet. So we had no idea her box office clout at that time. As long as we're on the subject of musicals and on Disney Plus, we might as well watch the remake of West Side Story. The studio really put itself behind this film, trying to create it to be the blockbuster that it should be, because it is based upon one of the greatest Broadway musicals ever made, and it was originally one of the biggest hit movie musicals of all time, winning tons of Oscars. And this movie was so well received by critics, and it's one of those that got delayed for over a year due to the pandemic. So I felt everyone was built up and can't wait to go to the theater and sell it out. But you know what? They didn't. It did okay. I mean, barely okay. Internationally, it made $76 million, but it cost $100 million. I actually, quite frankly, don't know where that money went because none of these people are giant stars that commanded a $5 million salary. But anyway, it's still a great film. It was nominated for 7 Academy Awards. It won a couple, including Ariana DeBose. It's a terrific film, but it's a little of a lackluster in the blockbuster world, but still definitely worth seeing, so you should watch it. Oh my God, the movie Babylon, which came out last year, you totally felt it was a blockbuster in the making. It was advertised all the time. I saw posters, it had a great cast, it was released during the holidays. Every reason you'd think it would be a giant hit. It's from the makers of La La Land. I actually love this movie, which you could love it too on Paramount Plus, by the way. But wow, what a disappointment at the box office. It made $63 million worldwide. It cost $76 million. So it really didn't recoup any of its money, and I really think it should have been up for Best Picture. Margot Robbie's great. Brad Pitt should have been up for an Oscar. It's another one like La La Land that takes place in Hollywood. This time it's in the 1920s during the silent film era. It's very epic in proportion. It's very sexy. It's gritty. It has so many things. And when we went to the theater, we thought, oh my God, it will be hard to find a seat, but it was very easy because it was kind of empty. But still, this is kind of like what I said, it's lackluster when you think it should be a blockbuster. The Northman kind of snuck into theater, so maybe it's only a blockbuster in the terms of the grandioseness of it. It's about a young Viking who spends the entire movie trying to avenge his father's death. So first we've got action, we've got great costumes, we've got Alexander Skarsgård, who is a terrific actor and quite nice to look at. We have Nicole Kidman as his evil, awful, terrible mother. But I sat alone in the theater, well, with my friend Carol. But we're sitting there thinking, why aren't other people here? It inched its way up to making $60 million. Perhaps streaming on multiple platforms will help it recoup some of the lost money. But I have a feeling most people will just turn to Amazon Prime and watch it for free. And this is still a really good movie, a blockbuster proportion, but not a blockbuster success. Blockbuster-wise, the movie Grindhouse was quite a disappointment. It cost $67 million, but only made $25 million back. By the way, you could find this on Tubi. Grindhouse takes the turn from the 60s and 70s where there were poorly crafted movies with bad prints of films that were very exploitive, and it pays homage to that. In this movie, there are two films. There's Planet Terror, directed by Robert Rodriguez, and there's Death Proof, directed by Quentin Tarantino. So both movies are made schlocky-like, which on purpose. They have a really good cast. They have fake previews of other movies coming soon, which aren't coming because it's just part of the overall fun of going to this film, reminding us of what it was like in the 70s. Apparently, the audience did not want these fun homages to bad, awful films because they stayed away. In fact, I read that a lot of people didn't realize it was one long movie with two shorter films in it. So after the first film, Planet Terror, a lot of people left the theater thinking it was over with. So what they ended up doing is releasing it as two shorter films in other countries, and of course the US, as Planet Terror and Death Proof, without doing the trailers for other films, just the movies as a whole. They were well received. Critics love these movies. They're really good. They're full of action. When you would rent them nowadays, you find them under each smaller film title. But I would seek out on Tubi the whole Grindhouse because I like having them together. I like seeing the fake trailers. It's just so fun. And obviously you didn't go because it flopped. Well, that's our show of the week. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Please share and subscribe. Tell your friends to share and subscribe. Hit that like button. Go ahead. And as we leave, let's take a look at another blockbuster that's coming out right now, the 4th of July weekend, the latest Indiana Jones movie. This probably will be a big hit, but this is a perfect example of a blockbuster film because the studio is embracing it, putting all its money behind its ad campaign, hoping it pays off in spades. I bet you it will. But let's follow and find out. Until then, I will see you next week. Thanks so much. Bye-bye. Oh.